your typical police officer, talk about the incentives that they face, and let's talk about Minneapolis, since we all know about Minneapolis and how their system was clearly rotten to the core.
Right. Well, let's take it at kind of a macro level first. We have something I sometimes refer to as the carceral industrial complex. Depending on how you count, we either have hundreds of thousands or even millions of people who are fundamentally in the business of putting bodies in cages. Some people are in the arrest part of that supply chain. Some people are in the prosecution part of the supply chain, and some people are in the incarceration part of the supply chain. But they're all part of the same industry, which is, again, the incarceration industry. And they're rational actors. They're rational actors, and so they try to maximize output. And I think we can trace that all the way back to what we see on the street. Police officers are under significant pressure to be productive, just like any other employee. And the way you show productivity as a police officer is one of two ways. You either issue citations, traffic tickets, things like that, because those generate revenue. And many police officers are under explicit pressure to generate revenue, and or you make arrests. But if you aren't out there doing one or both of those things, you are not being productive, and you are going to have a very unpleasant interview with your supervisor. And so when we have the incredible web and framework that we've talked about a moment ago, this overcriminalization. I mean, hell, you can't operate a car for more than 30 seconds without violating some sort of a part of the traffic code. Yeah. And so all of us are just kind of, I mentioned to you before we started talking, we're kind of all just prey animals in that environment. Any person, if you just sort of figure out, think about it long enough, watch them long enough, you'll figure out a way to, at a minimum, issue them a ticket or a citation of some kind. And if you look at them long enough, you'll also figure out a way to arrest them.
Yeah. I forget who was talking about this. I was watching listening to a podcast the other day, and the process of issuing traffic tickets. And we have police departments implementing those laws, and it's very much a profit center, particularly when you get to smaller towns. It's like how they fund policing, and it's think about a perverse incentive to pull as many people over. And this, of course, is some of these more horrific examples of police violence start with your back light was out. And so they're fishing for something, right?
Exactly right. And it's unfortunately it's spilled over. It's not just traffic citations anymore. In the piece that you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, I described a law in Shreveport, Louisiana that was just repealed last year that made it illegal to wear baggy pants. And there were more than 700 people arrested under that law during the time it was on the books, and they only finally repealed it after a police officer shot and killed a man while pursuing him to try to give him a ticket for wearing saggy pants. That's the point we've gotten to.
Yeah, that law is insane, by the way, and it clearly has a racial element to it. But you could probably write a whole book on insane and stupid laws that have been passed. I don't know how deeply you dug into that. Was that just about generating revenue? What was the public choice explanation for that law?
I think it's probably both. I think it generates some revenue, but it's also a way for people to express disapproval of particular groups or the behavior of particular groups. Of course, it has a racial element. 96% of people cited under that law were black.
Yeah.
And it's funny. There is a tendency to use the words sort of insane or crazy, but it's not actually. If you think about it, the Justice Department did a report on Ferguson, Missouri, after the unrest there, and one of the things they documented was how common it is for small towns in Missouri and elsewhere, but that's where they were focusing, to have all these laws that apply to the tiniest little details of your life. And just to give you a few examples, and IJ actually ended up bringing a lawsuit over some of this. There's a town in Missouri where it's illegal to drink a beer while standing at your barbecue. If you don't have screens on your window, you can be cited for that. If the weeds are higher than a certain level in your front lawn, if you cross a street on the wrong part of the crosswalk, you can be cited for that. So it's just, it reminds me of, I forget what that movie is. It was a Sylvester Stallone movie about the dystopian future where there's these machines that just spit out tickets every time you say a bad word or, commit an infraction. And there are towns in America that where they have arrived. Like that future is the present in those towns.